Just 5 years ago, a tin of baked beans cost 10 Rand. Today they cost 16 Rand a tin. 10% a year of food inflation. So by this logic, the average net salary for South Africans should have gone up from 19 to 31 Grand a month net, just to keep up with inflation. But to be precise, let's use more widespread data. A basket of 28 basic grocery items, bread, milk, chicken, beef, and so on, cost 883 Rand in April 2019. So from an average net income of 19 Grand a month, South Africans 5 years ago could buy a basket of necessities 21.6 times. That same basket has gone up 43% in 5 years, and the average South Africans can now buy it 17.5 times, 4 times less. To put that drop in purchasing power in a language most Sapphirs will understand, you are 267 less Zamaleks a month poorer. Not that anyone's cutting back on Zamalek, so you probably wouldn't even have noticed. But in all seriousness, you might think that this only affects the middle class and the poor. Oh no. If you're rich and uninformed, then you're in the same boat. Let's say you had 2 bars sitting in a savings account in 2019 getting 6.5%. After tax, your net return is 4.1% a year. And today you'd have 2.4 million Rand. That 2.4 million Rand buys 300 less baskets of basic groceries than your initial 2 bar could 5 years ago. And if you like to travel, how much poorer are you in euros or dollars? You don't want to know.
Inflation is sky high. Inflation is a very complex economic phenomenon that is influenced by various factors, but let's just name a few. Central banks have the power to influence the money supply. They increase money supply to stimulate economic growth, but if this is done excessively, it can cause inflation. Then there's government spending. They also contribute to inflation by increasing spending, especially when it's not matched by increased productivity. We can all agree that they're not productive. Then there's also rising production costs, like increased labor costs, increase to raw material prices. Then businesses raise their prices to maintain their profit margins. This is not to say that poor financial management isn't a thing in our generation. It is a thing. But we're also dealing with a very unsustainable economic system, hey? A system that's going to collapse very soon. The banks are also going to collapse. That's a story for another video. But it has to happen. We have to press the reset button. Things are going to get so bad. So bad. It's going to be worse than the 2008 financial crisis.
So the Minister of Finance, One Kotongwana, just announced a new inflation target of 3%. Sounds boring, right? Let me break it down because it's actually a big deal. Okay, so for the past 25 years, South Africa's goal was to keep the inflation between 3 to 6%. So inflation basically is how fast prices rise in an economy, right? So now that goal is shifted. Basically, it's going to be 3%, give or take 1%. What the government basically wants is for the prices to rise slower so that your money gets to keep its value longer. Here's why that could be a good thing. Number one, if prices rise slower, it means that your salary and your savings stretch further. Number two, it could lead to lower interest rates in the future, which in turn would mean cheaper car loans and cheaper credit. Number three, it also tells the investor that South Africa is serious about keeping things stable, and that would in turn help the rand. But here's the catch. It's not easy to keep prices that low when the basics of life are getting more expensive. Think about electricity for an example. Eskom's costs keep rising because it burns diesel when the grid fails, and that fuel is imported. So when the rand weakens or oil prices go up, Eskom spends more, and when it spends more, it passes that cost to us through higher tariffs.
Wasn't this supposed to be announced on the 20th of November? And Jiggy now there's an urgency. For ini. And I did say and mention in the previous video that they start off Gobama 6% just so that they prepare us and test the waters. And then Chigi, I but high 3%. So that these announcements when they made, we all applaud.
So South Africa's inflation target has officially been changed to 3% by the Minister of Finance, and basically complying with the request from the Reserve Bank, who has been practically begging for the last year for that the inflation target be reduced from 3 to 6% and being reduced to 3%. And what does this practically mean for me and you? Well, the intention behind this is to make sure that inflation does not get out of hand so that the rands of the poorest of the poor in our country can continue to afford food and shelter and everything that they basically need. And as we know, how does our Reserve Bank curb inflation? They increase interest rates. So with the inflation target reducing to basically 3% now, it will need to be below 3%. And if we're not, there's no reason why we can't expect interest rates to increase. In the month of September, I think inflation was around 3.4%, and the MPC is planned to meet next month, which means we could see potentially an increase in interest rates, even though we're all hoping for a decrease in interest rates. Anything is possible at this stage.
And then there's food. South Africa grows a lot, but unfortunately we still rely on important fertilizers, fuel for food, and global food prices. When electricity costs rise, the farmers pay more to keep irrigation and to keep the storage running, and we feel it in our grocery bills. And then we have fuel, which is directly tied to international oil prices and the strength of the rand. And when the rand drops, it costs more to import petrol, which means everything that moves by truck or by ship suddenly costs more too. So even if the government wants prices to increase slower, these global and local pressures make it really hard to hit that 3% target. So to make it work, government have to really spend carefully. They have to control their debt. They have to create policies that boost production. Otherwise, if they push too hard, the economy could slow down, jobs could freeze, and people might even earn less. So what does it mean for an ordinary South African? Number one, if it works, the prices are going to stop rising fast, which means also that life is going to get a little bit easier. Number two, if it doesn't, it means the cost of living is going to stay up high and jobs might even be harder to find.
Okay, so in what world, what the reality, what are you smoking is inflation 3%? Right. Now, the new target announced by Reserve Bank is 3% with a 1% tolerance. But let's be honest here, right? For people on the street, the working class, the almost gone extinct middle class, okay? Education inflation is up by double digits. Electricity inflation is up by double digits. Petrol inflation is up by double digits. Food has skyrocketed, right? Before COVID, you could buy a whole trolley for 600. Now you don't even get one bag for 600, right? Wake up. The inflation figures we're being told is a complete lie.